Today we're gonna make a chocolate chip New York style cheesecake with an Oreo crust. It is rich and creamy and velvety and has like little chocolate chips studded throughout as well as vanilla. It's decadent and amazing. So the first step in making the cheesecake is making the crust. And this one is super simple. It's just 2 ingredients. It's butter and sandwich cookies. I mean, obviously I'm using Oreos because love. We're gonna pulse our Oreos. So while we're doing this, we're going to quickly melt our butter. I just have regular unsalted butter here. We're gonna throw that in a pan. We'll let that slowly melt while we finish crushing our Oreos. So our Oreos are finely ground now. Transfer our Oreo crumbs into a bowl. So we've got our Oreo crumbs and we're gonna pour our melted butter on top. And then we are going to mix it up. You can use your hand to do it. The butter's like a little warm, so just be careful. Be mindful and such. Do want to make sure that it's all kind of worked in there. Okay, so let's line our pan. So I'm going to show you a little trick to try and keep the water bath from getting inside our crust, because there's literally nothing worse than opening up your beautifully baked cheesecake and then being like, oh, my crust is soggy. So we don't want that here. We don't like soggy bottoms. So I'm going to show you a quick little trick here to keep your crust nice and dry, even in your water bath, and also to like make it easier to lift out. So I like to line the inside of my springform pan with aluminum foil. Now place our mold inside our springform pan, carefully, gently, lovingly, trying to preserve the foil. Okay, so now you've got like a little skirt situation happening. Whatever, that's fine. Just fold it up. So then we're gonna press our crust into the bottom of our pan. All right. So we're just gonna, I like spread out the crumbs a little bit, and then just to kind of evenly coat the bottom of the pan. And then I will kind of start pressing it in. One thing I do to keep like the crust creep from happening, I take my fingers like this and I kind of tap along the edge, and that pushes down the edges of the crust so that you get that nice crisp line around the outside, and you don't get like like little stray bits and you're like, what are you doing up there? I didn't put you there. And I am just going to pop this in the oven, which I've preheated to 325. I am using convection because I don't want that direct heat on top of my cheesecake. But I'm just gonna pop this in the oven for about 8 to 10 minutes until it kind of looks a little bit matte instead of shiny. And then that'll be done. So, into the oven. So while our crust is baking, we are going to make our filling. Because like I said before, you don't have to stress about whether your crust is cool or warm or whatever. It is not that serious. So what is serious, however, is that all of your ingredients for your cheesecake are at room temperature. Okay, now I'm just going to stress this again because it is actually important. Room temperature. Sometimes recipes say this just for fun or whatever, just because it's what they heard. But this actually, it is integral to the final texture of the cheesecake. We're gonna beat our cream cheese first. I use this technique of spreading out the cream cheese so that it temps faster, it comes to room temperature faster. This is just to make sure that there are no stray lumps, that everything is smooth and silky and shiny and happy and beautiful. It's like a bad country song. Now every step in this ingredient combination is super vital to the final texture, okay? So don't be like skipping stuff or being like, oh, it didn't work, but I actually didn't temp my ingredients and like I just kind of threw it all in there. No, no. So my cream cheese is silky smooth. There's no lumps. It's all like very light and happy. And then I'm gonna add my sugar. Just my sugar. Go ahead and throw it all in there. And then start it a little slower, just to make sure it's doing what you want. And then increase it. And then we're gonna beat this with the sugar until there's no more visible granules. So it's gonna look, it's almost gonna look shiny and silky. So our crust is out. It'll cool a little bit by the time that we finish combining all of these ingredients, and then we'll wrap it for our water bath. But you can just let it set aside and let it do its thing. Meanwhile, our cheesecake batter is looking super good. We are going to then add our vanilla. Okay, so I've got vanilla extract. And I'm actually also going to add a little bit of vanilla bean seed. You can omit this if you don't have it, that's totally fine. The extract is lovely on its own. And then I will just place that, I will kind of scrape it into my batter. So then just beat your vanilla and your beans in there really well. Okay, so now that's in there really well. I'm gonna start adding my eggs. So these are eggs, and then there's a bit of egg, there's one egg yolk in here as well. So we will add our eggs one at a time, and then beat that in for about a minute, like an actual minute. Next. So now we're gonna add our last two remaining ingredients, which is heavy cream and sour cream. Now sour cream is what gives it that like kind of characteristic New York cheesecake flavor. But let's just go ahead and plop that in there. We're just gonna put all of it in there at one time, and all of our heavy cream. So the last thing we're gonna add is the chocolate chips. I'm gonna add a little bit of flour to the chocolate chips just to coat them and so that they don't all sink to the bottom of the batter. This does make the filling not gluten-free, so if you wanted to use something gluten-free, you could use like cornstarch or something like that. It's really not a lot. So we'll go ahead and pour these in. Da, 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 da. Okay. And then just fold those in. Okay. Now I like to line my pan before I pour my batter in. And then I'm going to take, so I made an X with my foil. And now I'm going to take my foil and I'm going to roll it up, okay? I'm just going to take everything and bring it up towards the top. And we don't want to direct water into our cheesecake, so if we roll our foil inside, then any water that makes its way up is going to go in. So we want to make it hard for the water to get in. So we are going to roll our foil out. I've got it all rolled, right? Feeling good about my rolling skills here. And then I'm just gonna pinch one side to kind of bring it taut. I'm gonna use a roasting pan. I find this to be the depth and width that I want. I like to pour my water when it's in the oven. And so all I'm gonna do is place this in the oven, and then I'm gonna pour my warm water down the sides, and it's gonna reach about halfway up, and then it's going to bake gently in this water bath. Probably for about 1 hour and 30 minutes. But we'll start checking in like 30, just in case. We just always want to see what our baby's doing in the oven, so that's the plan. So our cheesecake has been baking about 1 hour. We are looking for a like wiggle, but not like a jiggle. So I don't, we're looking for like a nice like movement back and forth, but not like any sort of loosey-goosey runniness in the center. So I'm gonna take you with me to look at it in the oven. It's not quite ready yet. It's a little loosey-goosey, but I want you to see what I'm talking about.
We open our oven. Can you see? Okay, cool. So then we've got, I like to put it on this rack where you can kind of see all the things. So you know when you shake it, do you see how it moves in a nice jiggly fashion? But maybe it's like a little bit too loose, right? Maybe we want a little bit more firmness in the center. So I'm just gonna slide her back in there. So it's been about 5 minutes. Whoop. And I'm just gonna check her again because she was almost there. So let's just give her the wiggle. Oh, do you see how the whole thing moves together in one nice big, like wiggly kind of fashion? Like there's no like there's nothing else going on here. So that's perfect. So we're just gonna pull it out. So this cooked for about an hour and 20 minutes. I am gonna go ahead and just open up the foil on the outside, which just kind of releases some of the steam. We've removed our foil just so that it cools a little bit faster. We're gonna let this cool to room temperature, and then we're gonna put it in the refrigerator, preferably overnight, to let it cool completely. You don't want to cut cheesecake while it's too warm. You want those, you want the texture to set, you want it to be cold. A warm cheesecake has kind of a weird curdled texture. Okay, so our cheesecake has sat overnight, and she's chilled completely, and she's ready to be unmolded. So just go ahead and run something hot around it. You can also use a kitchen torch. Take our cheesecake out, push her through. Okay, so now we've got our cheesecake out from the ring, and but she's still in the bottom, right? So that's part of what we have the foil here for. That way you can just pick it up from this bottom container. You can remove that, and then you can basically just peel the foil off. And you want to have your plate or wherever you're going to put it ready. But how easy was that? It's the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time to cut. You can just slice it. I'm going to use a bit of hot water to get a nice, beautiful, crisp edge. But if you are not in the business of caring, care not. So I just got some hot water here in a little jar. I'm going to dip my knife in there, and then I'm going to make my first cut. Oh, isn't that, and the bottom is crispy. Oh, do you see this? Do you see this? Mmm. Mmm. It is rich and silky and smooth and has like that classic New York cheesecake tang to it from the sour cream. Perfectly studded with chocolate chips, and that Oreo crust is to die for. It's crunchy and like a little buttery, and it's divine. One more.